All right. So a fairly small but intimate crowd here today. Thank you everyone for joining. Audience Alchemy, we appreciate you joining us. So for those of you who I have not met, and that's very few of you, my name's Bernie DeSantis. I'm the owner of Insignia Training Partners. And Insignia is a full service training broker. As I mentioned, we're based just outside of Detroit, Michigan. However, we do business globally. Obviously, in this virtual environment, you can be in Australia or Greece or Japan in a matter of seconds. So this virtual environment that we have available to us allows us all to be global organizations now. For reference, I personally have over 2 decades of experience in training development, facilitation, virtual training production. And while, my business can and always will help organizations with any of their training needs, my main focus now is on solving that one major issue, which is part of the reason why you're all here. I help businesses to create engaging virtual workshops and master classes that don't suck, right? And we've all unfortunately been to a few of those. So I want to make sure that you guys walk away with some tips today so that your next virtual event, whether you're doing it on your own or with support, goes off without a hitch. And so with that, I am co-presenting today with my very good friend, Julie Trombley. And Julie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, Julie Trombley, and I own Tackle Your To Do. I am an email automations and client management specialist, and I work primarily with realtors, but also support others who might need help with CRM support and automations and the such. I have over 26 years of experience of working in the realtor world, so I understand they're crazy, and maybe that kind of explains some of my crazy. I don't know, but. Love what I do, and I have worked a lifetime in different roles with in tech. So tech is just my thing. It's my jam, and I love it. And I love to help people of their processes as possible. So we're gonna talk a little bit more later about how we're gonna automate your webinar processes. So I'm so excited to be doing this with Bernie. So
I've done a couple of collaborations, but this is probably one that I'm most excited about. Obviously, Julie and I, both from the state of Michigan, we are both in the same networking group. We spend a lot of time together, and this is our first foray doing a combined webinar. So I'm really excited to be working with you today, Julie.
I mean, really, got the mustache and the purple hair. What else
Right?
could you
I mean,
want?
double barrel right there, right? All right. So I see a couple of you have already started to pop your contact information into the chat. Please do that. I highly encourage you guys to connect outside of this meeting. Obviously, most of us here in this meeting are networkers. So make sure that you're putting your information out there and don't be shy. Get to know each other a little bit. Because having support, especially in virtual events, is very, very helpful, as you'll come to see throughout the course of the presentation. So let's get this party started. And we're going to do that by starting out with a polling question. The first polling question is, how many virtual events have you yourself delivered, right? Where you were the facilitator, you were sitting in mine and Julie's chair as we are here today. All right, looks like we're waiting on just 2 more responses. Give me another couple of seconds here. All right, ending the poll, sharing the results. So more than half of you have done at least 1 to 5. So you have a little bit of experience as to what it takes to at least put on a virtual event. I was going to say successfully put on a virtual event, but at least have an idea of how to put on a virtual event, right? Some of those logistics, how you show up on camera, things like that. About a quarter of you have done between 5 and 20. So that means you have significantly more experience. You probably have done some semi-successful events. But what that experience gets you is a little bit of an understanding of what some of the challenges are that ultimately you may face when doing virtual events, right? Tech issues, internet going out, being able to manage all of the things that happen in a virtual event. And then 2 of you, or again, the last quarter, said you've done so many that you can't remember anymore. So hopefully when you walk away from today's training, if we're not able to shift your focus entirely to having support, we're at least able to give you a couple of additional nuggets that you can take away and implement as you continue to go forward doing those virtual events. All right, so let's dive in then, shall we? Um, you know, oftentimes when we're talking about virtual events, there are several ways that people struggle, right? And there's really, it comes down to about 3 or 4 ways that people typically struggle. And those are filling the room with the right people, right? If it's not a event where the audience is already dictated, right? It's a voluntary event, like all of you are here today voluntarily. No one told you you had to be here. Getting the right people in the room can sometimes be a challenge, especially if the reason for doing your virtual event is as a business development activity, right? None of it is not lost on any of us that most people do webinars, workshops, and the likes as a business development activity, right? You give away some information for free, showing value, and then there's oftentimes a sales pitch of some sort at the end, right? An offer is made. And the hope is that you provide enough value during the course of your presentation that the people who've attended not only take away those nuggets of information and value, but furthermore, see value in potentially working with you, right? And doing these events gets them familiar with you, who you are, your personality, your expertise. The next challenge that oftentimes people face is going to be managing all of the tech, right? So before, during, and after the event, there are things that you have to manage. You have all of the setup in Zoom or whatever platform you're using. Maybe it's Teams or WebEx or Butter, or there's dozens of them out there. Maybe it's setting up the LinkedIn event, right? There is a process to that as well. If you're going to market your event, LinkedIn is a great way to do that. Then there's how you show up to your event, right? So how you show up on camera, how you show up through audio. You want to make sure that you are presenting yourself well. And for a couple of you went to the Badass Business Summit and heard me say this, how you're perceived is how you will be received. So you want to make sure that you are showing up properly on camera and you sound good. People will put up with bad video. They will not put up with bad audio. So you want to make sure that you are on camera correctly. And if that's not going to happen for you, you're having internet issues, et cetera, very least you have to make sure that you sound good and are clearly heard. And then the last struggle is that most people have difficulty with the follow-up afterwards, right? Who do I reach out to first? What do I say to them? Do I make an offer on the very first message? What do I do in that follow-up process? So we're going to touch on a little bit of each of those categories throughout today's presentation. And so let's start by diving into setup and filling the room. And I'm going to make the assumption, and it may be an incorrect one, but I'm going to make the assumption that everyone here has set up a Zoom meeting at one point or another. Okay, so I'm not going to specifically go into how do you set up a Zoom meeting, although there are some settings that you should most certainly be aware of as it pertains to engagement features, right? You want to make sure that, as an example, your polling questions are activated if you intend to use them throughout the course of your presentation. You want to make sure that if you have a co-host, the co-host privilege is set up properly on the back end, right? So there are some settings that you have to be aware of, but I'm not going to go specifically into Zoom settings, but we will talk about engagement features a little bit later. What I find to be the more important piece is how do you get the right people in your room? And that's not always a guarantee that you're going to get the right people in your room using an organic marketing methodology, right? So the way that we set up our event today was we did almost all of our marketing on LinkedIn, right? So we set up a LinkedIn event and then we directly invited people that we thought it would provide value to. And that in some way, shape, or form may be interested in the services that Julie and I offer, right? So again, we're going to pour a little bit of value in, and then we'll make an offer at the end. And if it makes sense, we'd obviously love to work with you. And if not, you walk away with some of that value. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I'm going to pull up LinkedIn. And this may be a little bit of a retread for some of you. If you've seen this before, bear with me, but I think it's definitely worth reiterating. Right? So here's our event today. You can see that we have a title in here, right? We've got that set up. Julie went through and set up a landing page. We had 29 people register here on LinkedIn. We actually had significantly more, but I think most of you know that I lost my voice last week. So we pushed it onto this week. So we had less attendees register for this one than last one. So you can do this from either your business page, which is where I've set this one up, or from your personal page. Okay. And I'm going to start with a personal page because not everybody has a business page. So I'm going to go to my profile. excuse me, I'm going to go to the home page, and then along the left panel here towards the bottom, you see where it says events. So if you click on events in the top right here, it says create an event, and that will bring up the standard LinkedIn create an event page. Gives you the option of adding a banner. I highly recommend adding a banner. In most cases, when I do events that are hosted and delivered by Insignia, I will simply use the Insignia logo. However, there are occasions, and as we did today, where I will have a banner created that's specific to the event, right? So you guys saw the banner that we had for this one. It says webinar across it, right? Audience Alchemy, streamlining, automating, etc. So it does have some minimum requirements, or I should say maximum requirements as well, right? You can't have a huge banner on there, but it's a minimum width of 480 pixels, and it recommends a 16:9 frame. So again, if you have the ability, Canva, create a banner that is specific for your event. After that, you're going to drop down to event format. Now, you do have the ability to do a LinkedIn Live. I personally am not a huge fan of the LinkedIn Live. I prefer Zoom because you have a lot more functionality in Zoom, which I like. So I'll choose external event link. Then we're going to type in a title for our event, and I'm just going to put title sample because I'm not actually going to publish this event. You'll then pick your date and time for the event, right? As of right now, we're going to do it today at 3 p.m. It's going to be a 1-hour event, right? So it's going to go from 3 to 4 p.m. The next spot is your external event link. Now, if you are using a landing page, this is where you will put your landing page. And then within your landing page is where you will give people access to the actual Zoom link, as you guys experienced today, right? There are times where I personally have not used a landing page. I've just used a Zoom registration, popped it in there, right? They can say, yes, I want to attend on LinkedIn, but then they have to click that next link, either the landing page or the Zoom registration, to actually get the link for the event, right? So I'm not going to actually put anything in there right now. The next one is going to be your description. You want to have a few sentence description of what participants of your event can expect by attending, right? So we can pop back over to the one for today. I'm just going to duplicate this and go back to my event, our event rather. And you can see in the details section, this is where we have our brief description of what the event is today and what people can expect from it. You don't want to go into super detail because most people aren't going to read more than a few sentences, but you want to give them enough of a flavor as to what to expect that if they do dig into those details, they have an understanding of what they're getting themselves into, right? And then the last section is your speakers, right? So you want to add yourself as well as any other co-facilitators that you have for your event. And then each of the co-facilitators that you add, once you publish it, will receive a link in their notifications that says you have been added to this event as a speaker. Do you accept? And once they accept the event, then they are listed as a speaker for the event. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a moment and see what questions you guys have about that very brief, but frankly, very simple process. Any questions about setting up a LinkedIn event using external event links? Saying no, head shaking, no. Good. Okay, so crystal clear so far. Very good. So I'm going to discard these changes because the next step is really important. On your event, once you have it set up, you can invite up to 1,000 people per week from within your network. And that gets exponential for every speaker who you add to the event. So between Julie and I, we can each send 1,000 invites per week, each totaling 2,000 invites per week. And it is a passive invite, right? People just get a notification with the title that says Bernie has invited you to his event XYZ. Do you accept or do you want to ignore, right? So it doesn't say that they have to attend. It just says you've been invited. So it is passive and it does require the individual to click accept. But you have to also remember that that's not oftentimes the last step, because I know me personally, I will click accept and then not do anything else, hoping that I will get the recording afterwards, right? So there are some additional steps, which means that you need to be in communication with these people. So let's start with the invite process. Once you have your event set up, you click on share and then invite, and that's going to pop up a window that gives you access to your network. Now, if you leave it just as it stands naturally by default, you can go through and you can click one by one all of the people that you want to invite to your event. It's a slow and tedious process, but you do have that ability. Now, what I like to do, and actually my friend Buzz here is the one who introduced me to this. After I showed him how to do this, he showed me this next step, which is you have filter options, right? So if you go and let's say choose your locations and you filter by the US, you now get a restructured list, but it gives you this radio button at the top that allows you to select everybody that is currently in your view. And in this case, it actually shows up to 50 below the view here. So if I just click that button, it has now added 58 total people. I added 8 previously individually, and now it added the 50 that it immediately had access to. Now, if you go down, you just scroll down, it refreshes, and it adds another 50, right? You just keep on scrolling down, and you can wholesale, quite literally, invite your entire network, depending on how far in advance you set up your event and start this process. Like Laura, as an example, I know you have 11,000-ish connections, right? So that's a lot. You'd have to start 11 weeks in advance to get an invite out to every single person. But the reality is, do you want 11,000 invites going out, right? You would think you want volume. And obviously you do need to cast a wide net because the day and time of your event may not be good for everyone. But the reality is you want to think about who you're inviting to your event, not only who is most likely to attend, but who's also most likely to take value of it, right? So you want to be a little bit strategic about who you're inviting to your events, because if you're doing it as a business development activity, obviously you want to give yourself the best opportunity to potentially make sales to those people. Make sense so far? Everybody with me? Yeah. Okay, good. So that's just the front end, right? Once people actually click, yes, I'm going to attend, right? I'm accepting your invite. You'll start to see the participant list tick up here, right? If you click on that link, you get the full list of every single person that is registered for your event. And if you're doing it with co-facilitators or you have some other people helping you with marketing, you're probably going to get some folks that you're not connected with. So you want to go through and make sure that you connect with every single person who registers for your event. And once you're connected with them, the next step then is to, guess what? Message them, right? You want them to be as familiar with you as possible, and you want to make it as easy for them as possible to join. So assumably all of you received either email automation from Julie or direct messages from me about attending today's event, right? So it's about keeping top of mind and making sure that people are familiar with you, because I have errantly clicked on invites all the time. I do it all the time. But if you're not staying top of mind for them, they are less likely to ultimately show up and follow through that process, right? All right, so I'm going to take down the slide share for a moment. And the next piece is something that I mentioned as we opened the session, right? A few of you started dropping your contact information into the chat, right? For the purposes of networking. So if you are an avid networker, that is another way that you can market your event. Every single time you are having a virtual coffee with someone and you think your content is going to be relevant to that individual, let them know. Not only could they potentially show up, but if they find value in the subject matter you're delivering, ask them to invite other people as well, right, from within their own networks, and start leveraging those relationships that you're building. Okay, so those are 2 ways that you can start to market your event. Again, set it up as a LinkedIn event and directly invite. Then you can DM, and you're not restricted just to the people that you've invited through that application that I showed you. You can go and just DM your event to every single person that you are connected with if you'd like to, right? So I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I'm going to transition over to Julie so she can talk a little bit about the automation process, setting up landing pages and such.
Let me set up my screen share real quick here. All right. And everybody good? See the screen?
Good.
Awesome. Yeah, so while there are some manual pieces to this setup process, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about things we could do to automate parts of it too. So using a CRM and automation, so you're not losing your mind while you're trying to launch this event. And just briefly, CRM is the jargon. So if you don't know, it's a customer relationship management system. So at its core, it's a technology that's going to help you to manage interactions with your customers, or in our case, with your webinar attendees. So before we go too far, I'm also going to take a poll. I would love to know, how familiar are you with webinar automation tools? You're a newbie, you've dabbled with some tools, you've used automation for other things, or are you a pro at automating your webinar?
Just waiting on a couple more responses. I'll give you another 5 seconds to clickety clicky. And one, ending the poll. Results are on screen for you, Julie.
All right. Oh, we got a lot of newbies here. Perfect. Happy to help you with this process now. Some of you have dabbled in some tools. Okay. I'm surprised I don't see that you guys are using automations for other things. That might be a discussion for another time. And a pro at webinar automations. I kind of have an idea who that might be. So let us continue on. So since there's a various of usage of automation tools, I'm just going to kind of give you a brief overview that, the automations are going to help with the repetitive tasks, so you can focus on delivering value to your attendees. And we're going to save time to create a seamless attendee experience. So how we're saving time is pre-built workflows to handle tasks and emails and registrations and reminders automatically. The emails are triggered off to send as soon as somebody registered without any kind of a manual effort. And to batch process, communication for attendees, like let's say after the event, we can send out some automations afterwards. So how are we creating a seamless attendee experience? The smooth registration, and automating the confirmation instructions, calendar invites, the reminder emails that you were getting if you were in the automation, 1 week before, or 24 hours before, or an hour before. And then personalizing your follow-up based on the attendee's behavior. Did they show up live? Are you sending replay links, additional resources? So some of the benefits of webinar automation is higher registration and attendee rates. So in addition to your LinkedIn event, like Bernie was talking about, have an automation invitation sequence to your email list. Send event reminders to reduce no-shows and improve attendance. You want to have consistent communication with the attendees. So every registrating is going to get, consistent information, and it's going to be aligned with your brand. Improve post-webinar engagement and conversions, automated replay to everyone who registered. That's a great way to get, even people to get onto your email list. Even if they can't attend, give them the opportunity that they're going to get the replay. Send a survey to those who did attend live, because they're going to have the best feedback for you. And nurturing sequences to keep you on top of mind for future opportunities. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the key automation components. Feel free to take notes, but don't feel you have to write all this down, because I am going to share a PDF at the end, so you don't have to sit here, Don, I love you, and scribble a bunch of notes. Yeah, I know you. So first we're going to design a registration landing page that converts. And what is going to be included in that? We're going to have an attention-grabbing headline and a subheadline. And you can use tools like AI and headline analyzing tools to find out, what are going to capture somebody's attention to want to actually sign up for this. A short description about the webinar, the benefits, who it's for. You want to make it sound so like anybody who's reading the landing page, they're going to self-identify that they should be registering to attend this event. Speaker images, bios, credentials, this puts faces to names, builds trust, and shows their expertise. the registration form clear and concise, and the less information required, the better. Honestly, name and email, and even it's as little as the first name and email. Because if you start asking for too many things like a phone number or anything else, it's going to make it less likely that people are going to want to share all that information. And you're going to want at least the first name so you can personalize the messaging that's going to be going out to them. Have a strong call to action, save my spot, I'm in, sign me up, things like that. And you want buttons throughout the whole registration page, because you don't want somebody to have to scroll through all the text. They might see that first thing and be like, yes, I want it. They can hit the button and it'll take them automatically down to the registration form. Use a thank you page, to confirm your registrations. And on the thank you page, give them a place to add the event to their calendar. That is a really big one, because then that way they're not going to have to remember to manually go in and do that themselves. Again, you're kind of automating that process for them. And tell them to whitelist your email address so they can keep getting the information, as you're sending out reminders and the post-event information. Some pro tip here: optimize your landing pages for mobile devices. So many of us are doing things on mobile. Make sure your pages look good on mobile. It's a pet peeve of mine. I look at something on mobile and words are wrapping around, and that's the tech nerd in me. So make sure your pages are optimized. And if it's a paid event, from the registration page, send them to an order page. Don't have to have a lot of text on there, just the page where they can check out, and then send them to the thank you page. So now that we have a place for people to register, let's send them some invitations. So as Bernie talked about, again, you'll use this link in your LinkedIn. You use it on social media posts, and we are going to talk a bit about sending out some invitation emails. Obviously, the goal of this is going to be for webinar registrations, and these emails are going to go to your full email list that you've been curating. And we're going to include, compelling subject lines like, don't miss this exclusive training on whatever the topic is, a brief introduction to the webinar and its benefits, and a clear call to action, which is obviously taking them to the link to the registration page. As you're sending emails, like add urgency when it's like limited spots, early bird, 24 hours left, things like that. Some pro tips here: you want to segment your audience too, if you can. So those of you who have been doing webinars, maybe send an email to people who have attended for previous webinars, and hey, I'm having another webinar. This is what it's on, and here's the link to register. Has somebody signed up for a freebie that's related to what you're having your webinar topic on? Send a special email to them. Hey, we've seen you had interest in this. We're having a webinar on this. Here's how you can register. Send like 3 to 5 email invitations leading up to the webinar date. I guess it depends on your lead time of when you're starting to get that information out about how many you want to send out. But something else you want to do is, when you're setting up these automations in your CRM, is setting goals in the automation. So if somebody is in this automation, they registered, you take them out of the automation, because I don't know about you, pet peeve also, that I get emails saying, here, register for this event or buy this thing, my widget, and I've already either been to it, signed up, or bought the widget. Stop sending me things. Is the replay going to be available? Encourage people to register even if they can't make it live. And then we're going to have the post-registration email series. So keeping registrants engaged and attending live. So the first email is going to be immediately after registration. We're going to thank the registrants, confirm their spot, provide the webinar details. Again, give them the ability to add the event to their calendar in case they missed it on the thank you page. We're going to include that here too. An email a week before the webinar, reinforce why they should attend and share any prep materials if they should have any. Email 3 is going to be the day before. Send a reminder with clear instructions on how to join, and an hour before, this is the final reminder with the webinar link. Some pro tips here is you're going to use consistent tone and branding, test your emails to make sure all the links work, and also add yourself to all these automations so you're seeing everything as they're coming through and that they're working correctly. So, now that we've got your attendees reminded to come to the event, they're signed up, we're reminding them to come. Bernie's going to talk a little bit about showing up and delivering.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Well done. All right, guys. So a little bit of knowledge recall. I'm going to launch another polling question. What were the top reasons that I mentioned earlier that people struggle with hosting virtual events? And this is a multiple choice. You can select more than one. Good. We got 9 of 12. I'll give you another 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and ending the poll. Here are our results. So the answer is all of the above. I could easily have added an all of the above, but those were the 4 reasons that I stated earlier. So good job on knowledge retention. Those of you got all 4, but at least all of you, at least 6 of you got all of them correct. So well done. So when we're talking about how you show up, right, and how you deliver, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because we still have a little bit more information to get through, and I don't want Julie to feel rushed in her last portion either, because I do that to her all the time in our networking meetings. But there are some things that you want to think about, right? And I've done previous events where I talk very specifically about all of the things that you have to pay attention to. So in the information I dropped into the chat that has my scheduling information, you'll see a link to my YouTube page. And I have several courses that I've done very specifically around how you show up. And I'm going to go through some of those points briefly here. If you want to take a little bit deeper dive, feel free to check out that video. So let me reshare my screen. So this section is lights, camera, action. Okay, so you want to think about how you're showing up on camera, how your audio sounds, how you're engaging with your audience, and what your energy level is during your event, right? The last thing you want to be is Ben Stein. Everybody remember him from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the teacher, right? How many events have you gone to where the facilitator is Ben Stein? Far too many, right? You want to make sure that you have a higher level of energy. Typically, when you're at an in-person event, you're going to be higher level energy, right? You're going to be feeding off the energy of the people in the room. You don't necessarily get all of that in a virtual event. So you need to bring that out of yourself as much as possible for your virtual event. So let's quickly dive in. First and foremost, when you're on camera, guys, you want to make sure that your camera is at about eye level or just slightly above. So the reason for that is you want to simulate as much as possible eye contact, and you're able to do that by looking directly at the camera, okay? And the reason that you want it slightly above is actually for an auditory reason. If you are slightly lifting your head to look at your camera and make that eye contact, it's actually opening up your vocal cords, and it allows you to project better and be heard more clearly, okay? So again, as much as possible, camera should be at or slightly above eye level. You want to make sure that you are centering yourself in the frame. You can see right now I'm right in the middle. And if you break it up in thirds, the top portion of my head is in the top third. My face is here in the middle. And then my shoulders down are in the bottom third. I also like to give the 3-finger rule. Okay. And what that is when you are on camera, if you can fit about 2 to 3 fingers at the top of your head to the top of your frame, you are framed correctly. You don't want to have the top of your head cut off like this. And you don't want to have the bottom of your face cut off like this. I've been to a lot of meetings and have seen both. Don't be that person, okay? All right, so let's move on to lighting. This one is really, really important, guys. If you're going to be on camera, you want people to see you, right? So make sure that you have appropriate lighting. Your lighting should be in front of you and behind the camera, not behind you. If you have lighting behind you, you get what I refer to as the witness protection look, right? You guys remember Unsolved Mysteries and like those shows like that? They bring the guy on camera. They don't really want you to see who he is, put the bright light behind him. I can't tell you how many events I've seen where the facilitator is like that, okay? So you want to make sure that you are well lit from the front. Ideally, you want natural lighting, right? So if you have the ability, you're working from a laptop, sit right in front of a window, get that natural light coming in. Me personally, I work in a dungeon. I'm in my basement. I have no windows down here. So I use ring lights. I have 2 ring lights mounted on either side of my camera. Okay. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm pretty well lit right now, right? You can see my face, you can see my mouth moving, all my features, all good. Now, I work from 7 monitors, so the lighting isn't going to change significantly, but you will notice that instead of that white and yellow light, now it's more blue, right? It gives a different look. Now, again, you can still see me pretty well because I have 7 monitors. But if I was working from one, you would not be able to see me very well, right? So again, you want to make sure that you are as well lit as possible for your event. You want people to see your face, see your expressions, be able to visually engage with you. As it pertains to your background, as you can see, I have a fairly cluttered background. It's fairly organized, but it's fairly cluttered. For some people, this could become distracting. So if you feel like your background is distracting, use a virtual background like Julie has in her frame right now, right? It's very simple, uncluttered. It's not going to be distracting for people. Now, I've been given feedback that people want to see more of my personality, and I feel like this does it pretty well. I got all my Iron Man stuff over here and behind me. I got my, my lava lamp back in the corner. So it gives a little bit more of my personality. But again, depending on your audience, if you feel like it's going to be a distraction, use a virtual background. Caveat to that, if you're going to use a virtual background, it's best to do so with a green screen, okay? Because oftentimes with a virtual background, what you'll get is as you move, those little shadows, right, in the virtual, and that can be distracting as well. All right, so Julie, I want to give you a few minutes, so I'm going to take about 3 more minutes and wrap this portion up. Last couple of pieces here. Audio, as I said, people will put up with bad video. They will not put up with bad audio. So you want to make sure that as much as possible, you are avoiding any background noise. If you have the ability to close off the area that you're working with and presenting from, so you don't get any distractions, random people walking in the room and the likes, close that room, right? Avoid those distractions, avoid that background noise. All microphones are not created equally. Okay, so the one that is included with your hardware, right, on your laptop or that came with your desktop, it is not made by the best provider. It is made by the lowest offerer. Okay, so when they are creating spaceships, as an example, you would think that they spend a lot of money on it, but they still award the project to the lowest bidder, right, that fits specifications. So with that said, I'm not telling you to go out and buy $200, $300, $500 microphones. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is be very familiar with your hardware. Understand how far away or how close you need to be to the microphone so that you get good audio. Okay, I personally use a Blue Yeti. I absolutely love it. Some people don't like them. They prefer the Shure microphones. Whatever, it doesn't matter the brand. The point is, take the time to practice with it. Record yourself, listen to yourself, understand what angles and distance give you the best audio. Because again, you want people to be able to hear you. They will put up with bad video. They will not put up with bad audio. The last section here again, attitude and energy. Guys, when you're in person, you're going to be feeling the flow. But when you're virtual, it's up to you to bring the flow. You need to have good posture, good body language, right? Because body language absolutely communicates. And if you are not presenting with a high level of energy and good body language, that will communicate through the camera. So have high energy as much as that you can muster. If you have the ability, stand up when you are delivering. Most people will sit down. I am sitting down, but I have a lot of experience facilitating from a seated position and bringing that energy, so you won't notice it as much. But if that's not your natural state and you have the ability to stand, you will experience a higher level of energy by standing, okay? Again, make sure that because you're well lit and you're on camera, that you are having facial expressions, right? You're smiling from time to time. You're changing the way that you're looking at the camera. You're moving around a little bit. If you are a person who naturally talks with your hands like I do, I'm Italian, make sure that you're bringing your hands into frame from time to time, because that is how you naturally communicate, and that will help to communicate your message to your audience. Last but not least, and this is part of engagement, but we're not going to get super deep into engagement today. Bring your participants into the conversation as much as possible, right? Those polling questions. We're designed to bring you guys back into the conversation. Occasionally, ask people to drop something in the chat. If you have the time, bring people off of mute from time to time. Ask them a direct question and have them verbally participate, right? Having them verbally participate and engage in the conversation brings new energy into the conversation, okay? All right, so I'm going to stop there. Julie, I'm going to hand it back over to you, my dear. Oh, you're muted.
I actually have time. Y'all
You
don't.
have a little bit of time, a luxurious like 14 minutes.
Some of
If
y'all don't know
if
what
you
it's
want to take
like.
up all the time.
Y'all know what it's like. We're in a networking group together, and I get like announcements at the end, and sometimes it's like 30 seconds. And I have to go into speed. Okay, so I want to pick up so you've had your event, your webinar, and now we want to have some, post-webinar follow-up emails that we're going to send out. So we're going to maximize engagement still with our attendees and those who have registered. So our first email is going to go out the day after. We're going to thank the attendees for coming, share the replay link, and recap any of the key points that were covered during the webinar. 2 to 3 days later, we're going to share some additional resources, maybe answer some common questions that came up. Another 2 to 3 days later, we're going to send the third email. We're going to focus on one area or topic that the webinar covered. And another couple, 2 to 3 days, we're going to focus on another part of what the topic was. And then, another 2 to 3 days later, we're going to send our fifth email. And this one, we're going to provide a clear call to action to either work with you, join a program, explore your offerings, get on a call, just somehow kind of put like that final little bow on the package of the webinar follow-up. Some pro tips on here is, personalize the follow-up based on the attendee behavior. Did they attend live, or, are they watching, just getting the replay? Send 2 different post-event emails, one to those who attended live and one to those who are just getting the replay, but then bring them down to everybody gets the rest of the emails the same. How do people respond to poll questions or chat interactions? You can use that information into these follow-up emails as well. Include testimonials or case studies, to help build credibility to, your services and what you do. And you always want on the very last email to have some kind of a PS that notifies them that they are now added to your main email list, and they have the opportunity to unsubscribe at any time. So, our best practice for webinar automation is start with a clear plan, outline the entire journey before you set up the automations, and test everything, landing page links, webinar integrations, and everything. And if any of you saw, like last week, my 24-hour notice invitation that went out, a day early, double check for human error, but also double check for platform error. I found out that the platform I was with last week that I'm no longer with this week, they were sending my emails out on Pacific time. I'm Eastern time. That wouldn't have been cool to send out the 1 hour till the 1 hour reminder, and it's going out at 1 o'clock Pacific, because by then we're done and we're probably getting ready for dinner. So, check, like I said earlier, add yourself to all these automations so you can make sure these things are triggering off and you're getting them at the right time and they're working the way they should be. Monitor analytics, track your registrations, your attendees, your engagement rate, and see what you need to do to change things for future webinars. And leverage any kind of tools that you might need, like Zapier, to connect platforms like your CRM and Zoom, and do what you can to streamline your workflows. So I'm gonna take a quick vibe check. So drop in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about automating your webinar process? 1, I'm a bit overwhelmed. 10, I'm super confident. Let's do this. Oh, I have to go see where I find the chat. There we go. Oh, Don, honey, I got you. Awesome. 7. Mark, we can talk for sure. What would
A little bit of a mixed bag, Julie.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Not sure how I feel about automating. Buzz, we can definitely talk. um I mean, it's such a great thing to do for your webinar process. It's because it's going to help you so much. So as I promised, I'm going to drop a link in the chat of that whole checklist, so you don't have to, remember all this, go through I mean, obviously, we'd love for you to watch the replay again, take some more nuggets, but as soon as I'm done screen sharing, I will drop the link in the chat. But automation doesn't just save you time. It's going to set up for webinar success every time. In fact, webinars with automated follow-up seen 80% higher engagement compared to those without. So I think, Bernie, we're going to talk a little bit more about some post-event engagement. And again, like I said earlier, like there's going to be some manual pieces to it, the whole LinkedIn side of things, but they're, automate where you can, and it's going to save you so much time.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of moving pieces ultimately to doing a virtual event. A lot of people think when they do their very first one, hey, I'm going to take my content, jump on camera, I'm going to talk for an hour, everybody's going to take something away, it's going to be fantastic. But then you come to realize that there are all of these other things that go on before, during, and after your event. And it's almost like playing Tetris to a degree, right? Like you are moving things around constantly, having to communicate with people, push different buttons, adjust where that particular piece goes and plugs into the overall thing. Now, imagine for a second playing Tetris while also trying to deliver a presentation. It's not easy, guys, right? There's a lot of things happening. And when you're trying to activate both left brain and right brain things at the same time, you are inviting issues. You need to stay focused on your area of expertise, which is, in all likelihood, the subject matter that you're going to be delivering. And that's ultimately the value that Julie and I can bring to your virtual events, right? Julie with the automation side of it, setting up some of that technology for follow-up and follow through with your participants. And where I tend to help more is in event, right? Setting up the engagement throughout, but also helping to put some of those butts in the seats, right? I walked you guys through some of the organic methodologies to filling your events, but there are other ways as well, right? You can do press releases, you can do targeted ads, you can do email campaigns above and beyond the automations, right? You may have an existing list of people that you're already connected to. Again, to Julie's point earlier, sending them a message, hey guys, I'm doing this event, stop by, right? So a couple of just additional nuggets in the last few minutes that we have left. I wasn't able to get super deep into the engagement portion of my presentation. However, I will say this, when you are presenting and you have about 40 minutes or so of content, right? 40 to 45 minutes of content, you should have an engagement opportunity at least every 10 minutes, right? So that means you should have an opportunity for your audience to do something at least 4 times in that 40 minutes of content, be that a polling question, a chat prompt, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a breakout room. Have them do something to draw them back into your presentation. Reality is, I'm working from 7 monitors, and I know that I am an outlier, but it's very rare that people are working from only one. Some of you still do, but it's very rare that people are only working from one, especially from a home office, which means that they have Zoom on one, but they could have email, Teams, LinkedIn, Slack, and so many other different things on that other monitor. And all it takes is one email, one message to distract them, and they are no longer engaged in your presentation. So you want to bring them back to the platform, back to the conversation at least once every 10 minutes. And I would even go as much as once every 5 minutes, right? So in a 40-minute presentation, somewhere between 4 and 8 engagement opportunities throughout. And again, I go into a little bit more depth with that in the video on YouTube if you want to check that out. To kind of wrap things up, the follow-up, how many of you have heard that it takes about 12 to 18 touch points to start a conversation with a potential client? Right? Some of you have heard even more than that, and that is absolutely true, depending on the individual and depending on the subject matter or the widget that you're trying to sell, right? So as much as possible, you want to automate that process, because how many folks do we have in here today? We have 11 people in here today. So if I were to manually try to reach out to each of you 18 times, that would be well over 100 activities that I myself have to try to do. Why wouldn't I try to automate some of that, right? simplify it for yourself, but also so you're giving consistent messaging to the people that you're communicating with. Okay. So with that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. Any questions in the last 5 minutes? Before we do that, though, I do again want to make our offer. So Julie and I are offering a combined package where we will help you to set up not only your automations and your landing page, but I will also run your event as producer for you, right? So that way you are staying solely focused on delivering your content and engaging your audience. Meanwhile, I'm in the background pulling all the levers for you. So that way you are supremely focused on just your audience there. So with that, any questions? Open it up to you. Don.
Hey, Bernie, when you were doing the invites on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and the trick that Buzz showed you, you were able to see your first level connections.
Correct.
Is there a way to talk to your second and third level connections as well?
Not using that functionality. However, what you can do is you can enlist a friend, right? Somebody who's already a first level connection with you and have them register to attend. Then they can invite all of their first level connections. Right. So when Julie and I set this up, we each went out and invited our first level connections. Invariably, some of her first level connections are not connected with me, right? So now I have access to her audience. She has access to my audience. It doesn't have to be a co-presenter. If you just have a friend who's willing to help you out and has a little bit different audience, they can invite for you as well.
Follow-up question to that. Can you use a Sales Navigator search to...
Ooh, good question. I don't have Sales Navigator myself. I opted not to pay for it, but I would imagine that there is some level of ability to leverage it.
Sorry, Bernie, earlier, when you went through the 1,000, you taught us that we could invite 1,000 people a week.
Mhm.
And then you said we can also go into their messenger, right? But you don't want to do that because that's really in their face, right? That's really bothering people.
It depends on the relationship that you have with the connection, right? If it's somebody that you have regular communications with, or you've at least communicated with before, it's not quite as pitch slappy as it might seem.
Right.
Like if you have people that you've connected with and have never had any interaction with,
Right.
that may be a little bit forward, but again, it depends on you, your personality, your message, and how you style that. I have certainly invited and DM'd people that I have never spoken with before.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And so follow-up question to that is that when you have the landing page and you send it out to the 1,000 people that invite, is there a spot somewhere and that you can say, like, share might interest somebody, there's no spot that you can write that, right? You're just sharing the event. That's it. That's all.
So if you want to create additional messaging, you actually have to DM them, right? The
Okay.
invite function just
Yeah.
sends them a notification that
That's it.
Bernie is inviting you to his event, Audience Alchemy, today. Do you
Gotcha.
want to attend or not?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
actually want to include some instruction or different messaging, you have to DM them.
You have to DM them or do a post.
Correct.
And what I've done too is if it's somebody you haven't talked to in a while, is maybe not send them the link to register, but just say, hey, I'm putting on this event. Can I send you the link? Because I know so many of us are getting spammed with stuff that people are just sending links automatically. And then, it's just like, I'm not even. So I've done that too. I've I'm doing this event, would love to invite you. Can I send you the link to register?
Right.
Because when you're saying accept on LinkedIn, it's not fully registering. I really wish there was a way you could connect your landing page to that button that says accept, but it doesn't. So that's kind of why we do the follow-up messaging, that there's one more step so you can get, the reminder emails and all of this kind of stuff.
Right, because you see the list of who accepted,
Right.
but they're not fully registered. That's when you could go back and say, great, here's the link.
Yeah.
Gives you an opportunity to engage with them.
It's a lot of work.
It 100% it is. Yes. It's not as easy as it
No.
seems initially. Mark, I saw you raise your hand for a second there. Any comments?
Well, I was just indicating, I'm one of those guys. You DM'd me, Bernie, about this.
Mhm.
And we've had conversations in the past, so it wasn't a out of the blue, pitch slap, but it was good to hear from you. And I was like, yeah, I am interested in this. That was a nice, personal invite situation. So
Absolutely.
it did work well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mark. Thank you. All right, guys, it's 2 p.m. Eastern. I am a stickler for ending on time, so I don't want to keep you over. If you have any additional questions, Julie and I will hang out for a few minutes. More than happy to chat with you. I don't think I mentioned the pricing on our combined offering, so let me at least do that. So for the combined offer of producing the event as well as handling your landing page and all automations, we're going to be retailing that at $1,500. But for attending today or being participants, we'll actually give you a 20% discount. So that'll take us to $1,200. If you're interested, feel free to schedule some time to chat with either Julie or I. We're happy to discuss with you. But with that, enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining.
everyone.
Bye.